What's up, everybody? Happy Monday and welcome to Moxie Bets presented by Caesar Sportsbook. I'm Katie Mox, and today is part 2 of our NFC West preview with our friend, the czar of the playbook and CBS Sports NFL analyst, actually football analyst. He's a football encyclopedia, Emory Hunt. How are we doing, Emory?
Doing fantastic, Katie. I'm glad to get back on and talk shop with you again.
I am as well, and thank you so much for your patience. For anybody that knows, my dog had a medical emergency, so we had to shut things down. So thanks to everyone at Omaha and, of course, to Emory as well for having us do a two-parter. Plus, I just feel like, the Niners were just so hot. It was like so good to talk about them that we kind of needed to just take a break and then come back and talk about the rest of the NFC. Am I right?
I guarantee that was the case. We did spend too much time saying why you were wrong. So we got to come back and reel it back in.
I don't know. You showed up today wearing red. I don't know.
I'm surprised you didn't say that, man. You from Cali. How you don't know about Rob's Place?
I don't know about Rob's Place. Tell me about it.
It's a fantastic place. Burgers, malts, shakes out in Los Angeles. I'm shocked that you haven't heard of Rob's Place. Been around.
I lived in LA for 15 years. Where in LA is it?
I mean, you can still name some of the people that work there, like Big Shirley, Raj, Dwayne.
Which part? Which part of LA?
Watts.
Which part of LA?
Watts.
All right. Well, next time I'm there, I'm going to go to Rob's Place. Shout out to Rob's Place in Watts and Shirley. I hope to meet you actually someday. All right. Emory, before we dig into the rest of the NFC West, which is the Rams and the Cardinals, kind of the lower end of the NFC West, which is a little bit crazy because the Rams are 2 years removed from a Super Bowl. A lot of news has been coming out of training camp. Probably the biggest news on the quarterback front is Joe Burrow and that calf strain. How is this going to affect how you bet the Bengals? I think they're saying right now 6 weeks, which does put him at week 1. Allegedly, supposedly that could happen. But one, how worried are you about the Bengals? Because hand up, I have Bengals actually as my Super Bowl pick. They were plus 1,000. I know I want the 49ers to win, but you got to hedge your happiness a little bit. And this does concern me a little bit, but I'm glad it happened early. What do you think?
Well, first of all, Katie, Rob's Place is from What's Happened in the TV show. Come on now. I threw it over your head. But in terms of the Bengals, right, I am not surprised that they are going. I would put them on ice because, like you said, it does push them up to week 1. We don't need to see Joe Burrow in the preseason. We just need to see him in week 1. But it also, quiet as kept, for me, selfishly, puts my week 1 upset pick in play again. The Browns. I already had the Browns win that ball game. We talk about the Bengals, and we know the Bengals are a good team, but the Bengals tend to start the season slow. Like last year, they were 4-5 or whatever before they went on this run. So this to me, it's serious because we know Joe Burrow is mobile. He's athletic. Him getting outside the pocket, evading pressure is a part of his game. And if he's not able to do that at 100%, you want to make sure you get that calf 100% before you throw him out there. So don't play him in the preseason. We've seen enough of Joe Burrow. Make sure he's ready for week 1.
Okay, I like that. Now you are our running back whisperer aficionado. Things with the Colts not looking too good. Jonathan Taylor met with Jim Irsay, and quickly after that, he said that he has requested a trade. And then you got Irsay saying a bunch of crazy stuff. That if Jonathan Taylor is off the Colts and he dies, nobody's going to remember them. And then you got Jonathan Taylor clapping back. What are your thoughts on this situation?
Both guys need to stay off Twitter, go back on that bus, talk it out again. Because if you're Jim Irsay, you got to realize hey, this is an elite player. You don't want to let elite players walk out the door. And if you're Jonathan Taylor, you got to realize, man, you ran for over 1,800 yards 2 years ago with anybody at quarterback. If you now are paired with an athletic mobile quarterback like Anthony Richardson, you might hit 2,000. Then after this season, now you have the leverage. Hey, man, I just ran for 2,100 yards. Not realizing half of it is due to the fact that you have a guy taking away that extra defender. So now you have a more advantageous box to run against. People got to see these things clearly. He could be JT 2K running with Anthony Richardson. So he got to hey, man, now is not the time for the power play. Next year is the time for the power play.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I was listening to our friend, Lee J. Douzable. I think they were talking to him right after the news on HQ. And he said, Jonathan Taylor doesn't have the leverage right now because he didn't have a great season. So to your point, like sticking your heels in the ground now is not the time. Prove yourself this year with a quarterback like Anthony Richardson, and then see what you can do. But Irsay is just like, I was talking to Will Brinson the other night, like of all of, and I'm curious what your thoughts is, because he gave me a wild answer. Of all of the NFL owners, who would you like to party with? I said Jim Irsay because that would be a wild ride. Will Brinson, for some reason, said Jed York, which he seems like a square to me. I would not want to hang out with him. Shout out to the York family. We do love you. Who is a owner that you would want to party with?
There's Jerry Jones, obviously, is one,
Yes,
I'm pretty sure
Jerry's
he knows
world.
where all the good bourbon is. And then you talk about Jim Irsay. Now, Irsay, you got to be careful because he can go too far down. You know what I'm saying? Like, so you gotta be careful. Get what you ask for, get it because you asked for it with Irsay. But also, how about Rita Benson? New Orleans,
Yes.
the fun town. She's a widow now, so I don't know if she's dating. So you know what I'm saying? Like, that's an opportunity. You want to be an owner, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's an opportunity right there. You know what I'm saying? But I would say Rita Benson because of the ties to New Orleans.
Okay, yes, and I think that sounds super fun. I said Irsay just because it would be a wild ride. I also like Jerry Jones as well, just because I just want to get in like rich people trouble, right? Where you don't actually get in trouble, but you could do wild things. So that I don't know why Will Brinson said Jed York, but I guess. Yeah, I'm just like, that just to me doesn't sound very fun, but that's neither here nor there. One last training camp story. Aaron Rodgers clapping back at Sean Payton. Wanted to know what your thoughts on this are. Basically, Aaron Rodgers said, keep my coach's name out your mouth. And it wasn't appropriate for Sean Payton to do that, but I thought Rodgers' response was a little aggressive.
Both. Yeah, at the end of the day, Sean Payton said the quiet part out loud. We all was talking about that last year, so it's not like he said anything that was out of pocket. And Aaron Rodgers protecting this guy, and Nathaniel Hackett. But the good part about all of this, we get to see these guys play each other early in the season. So, and I know Sean Payton, knowing how he was with the Saints and the Atlanta Falcons, if there's an opportunity for him to keep the foot on the gas in terms of scoring, they will. So it's gonna be a fun game to watch.
Super fun game to watch. All right, we're going to take a quick break before we get back with Capper's Corner and our friend Emory Hunt. Why should you bet with Caesars Sportsbook? 2 words, Caesars Rewards. Every bet brings you closer to the type of benefits only Caesars can offer. Hotel stays, VIP experiences, sports and concert tickets, and more. It's not just an app, it's an empire. All right, Emory, it's time now for Capper's Corner. Let's just revisit the NFC West odds before we get into the Rams and the Cardinals because they've shifted a little bit. The Niners are now minus 200 favorites. They were minus 175 for part 1, which means the Seahawks are now plus 220, up from plus 210. Do you think this has to do with Brock Purdy being designated as the starter, or why do you think these odds have changed?
No, it has nothing to do with Brock Purdy. He's not that big of a difference to swing the line.
All right, fair. Not Brock Purdy, but that the Niners have figured out, who their quarterback is likely going to be. It's not exactly a question mark.
No, I think what it is, we just saw a word that the Seahawks are going to be without for some time. They don't say what time it is. The 2 running backs, Kenneth Walker and Zach Sharp, they're the rookie. And so people are probably questioning, well, how they're going to run the football without their top 2 backs. So I think that kind of shifted a little bit, but we didn't get a real clear answer from Pete Carroll on, he said sometime, whatever that means, in coach's term, a practice or 5 practice, who knows, right? But I think that's what kind of shifted things a little bit more. So like, hey, if they're going to be one-dimensional, it kind of makes them easier to defend. So I feel like that's probably why we're seeing this swing a little bit more so in the 49ers' favor.
All right, that actually makes a ton of sense. So let's talk about the bottom half of the division. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. The Rams win total set to 6.5. The under juiced to minus 120, which means books don't even think they can get 7 wins. Odds to win the Super Bowl. We don't need to look at this conference. It's not happening. It's a weird season for them last year. I believe they had the worst season coming off of a Super Bowl in the history of the NFL. It's hard for me because the Rams still have stars, right? You've got Matthew Stafford, you've got Aaron Donald, you've got Cooper Kupp. and you got Sean McVay, who, the boy wonder coach, an incredible offensive minded coach. But then it gets real thin, and a lot of rookies and new people, maybe a lot of upside. They are well coached. How do you feel about this 6.5?
Well, we talked about this before, Katie, where, I love the talent on the roster, but it's just young. You're going to play a lot of rookies, a lot of opportunity. And it doesn't really take long to turn things around in NFL. But, man, you're talking about San Francisco, Seattle in the division. You're going to need a lot from these rookies.
Yeah.
And I've said this before to you that I pretty much think we'll see Stetson Bennett before the season is over with. We don't know what type of Matthew Stafford we're going to get. Remember, he's coming off an injury. They're young up front along the defensive line outside of Aaron Donald. Secondary is young. Their offensive line is a question mark, in my opinion. So I would go under this number comfortably because I feel like the Rams, I think 6 is the number for the Rams, but I feel like they're just too young to really trust them in this division where you have 2 teams that go to the playoffs.
I agree with you. And I honestly, for all the same reasons. And it's so interesting that you said that about Stetson Bennett. Of course, I was shocked when you first said it. But yeah, when I think about it, Matthew Stafford, too, there was a lot of rumors that he was going to retire last year. He's coming off a pretty bad injury, and he's older. He's got his Super Bowl. Like, how motivated is he going to be with a team that really doesn't have a chance at another ring? So that's interesting. Also, funny little joke, him and Stetson Bennett, maybe the same age. But, I feel bad for people like Aaron Donald. But, what does he have? 1 more year, I think maybe we'll see from him before he goes somewhere else. But it's going to be frustrating. When you look at the division, I think that they could beat the Cardinals, and then that's about it. So yeah, I agree with you. I'm taking this under, and I am a little bit of a Rams hater, but I do think that's a very sharp play by you. Looking at the Cardinals, the lowest win total in the league, 4.5. It was 5, and then it's been bet down to 4.5. With the the over is juiced to -115, under -105. So kind of close to even money there. They have no shot of winning the Super Bowl, the conference, or the division. They will be the worst team in the NFL. And it's interesting too, Emory, because they got a new head coach, new coordinators. Kyler Murray, not playing. I don't know if they're going to start with Colt McCoy. Maybe at some point Kyler Murray comes back. He tore his ACL in December of last year. Usually those take about a year. We had a Cardinals insider come on the Pick Six podcast, and he's obviously, people who are reporters for a team are going to be like me with the 49ers, a little bit more on the up and up when they talk about it. But he very interestingly said, it's hard to bet this win total because if they come out and they start losing a lot, then the motivation to put Kyler Murray back in the situation comes almost like slim to none. You're probably not going to see him until very late, if at all. And that's going to be more of a tank. But let's say they come out and Colt McCoy and some of these new guys start winning games, then they might be more apt to having Kyler Murray come back. And then this might get a little bit hairy. I lean under here. I lean more towards the tanking. Kyler Murray came out and said, I don't want to rush things. We'll see how it goes. It's not worth injuring myself. So I lean under, even though there's 17 games. To win 5 should be easy.
Right. And that's why I have gone over a bunch on this Cardinals team in their win total, because on paper, they're not as bad as people are making them out to be, especially on defense. I think they got some really good defensive pieces. Offensively speaking, they should improve along the offensive line. You draft Paris Johnson. I like Michael Wilson, the rookie out of Stanford. You just hope that he can stay healthy. He was my number 1 split in coming into the draft because he's just so dynamic in what he does in every aspect of receiver play. But when you look at the run game, okay, we know a lot of that was kind of tied to how well people respected Kyler Murray's athleticism. Colt McCoy is athletic, but he's also late 30s, right? So he's not the same Colt McCoy we saw running around at Texas. And so I feel like this team could start slow. It's going to be all about how they lose games or win games. If they're losing games 17-14 or competitively, I think it's going to yield itself to them going over the summer. I think they will, because at some point you're going to get Kyler Murray back. He has a vested interest in playing because you don't want this team to be dead last and finish first overall, because they have the potential to be picking first and second, depending on how the Texans go. And so we know if they pick first, that could potentially mean the end of the Kyler Murray era in Arizona. You don't want that to happen if you're Murray. So you got to get out there and do something about it if you can. Yeah. So I feel like they can go over this number. Last year, the Bears, finished first overall, and they had 3 wins, right?
Yeah.
And so you really have to be ridiculously terrible to finish with 0 to 2 wins. I think the
Yeah.
Cardinals are much better defensively from a personnel perspective. And with the NFC West, you could potentially sweep the Rams. You may luck up and upset somebody, maybe in week 1 or 2, whatever. I think they can get 5, so I'm gonna go over. I'm glad it's 4.5 now, as opposed to 5 or 5.5 it was earlier in the off season.
Right. Yeah, it's hard. It's one of those teams where you probably want to just lay off of it. I lean under, you lean over on this one. It's just it's hard to get a good read on this one. When looking at prop bets in the division, you've got some big star players, and then you've got a lot of new people or mediocre people. I know you're high on Geno Smith. His passing yards 3,800.5, pretty high actually. Then you got Christian McCaffrey, rushing yards 87 or 875.5. If I can talk this morning. You're big on disrespectful props for Christian McCaffrey. Is this low?
It's extremely low. What are people expecting Brock Purdy to throw for 5,000 yards and lead the charge and be
not even me.
Steve Young, or at worst Steve Bono, right? But my thing is, you have an elite tailback. This is such an easy number, especially in 17 games. When it was 16 games, you only need 65 yards a game. Now you probably only need like 55 or 58 yards a game to get 1,000. Well, why is this number so low? So I'm crushing this over on his rushing prop. He can roll out of bed and be a 1,200-yard rusher easily with a skill set.
I agree with you. And I do think that this number is low. And I love your disrespectful props. I feel like those are ones that definitely always hit. And running backs so well. I actually like CMC to win the offensive player of the year. It's at plus 1,100. Now, he is the favorite, but at plus 1,100, it doesn't necessarily feel super chalky. You've got, Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase right underneath him. And you kind of alluded to this already. CMC was such an impact guy last season. It's so easy to forget that he was a midseason trade, that he wasn't exactly there all season long. Like, I've said this on this podcast before, like a full season under Shanahan, if he can stay healthy, which I believe that he can, because Shanahan does run a little bit of a committee. So I think they'll try to share the workload for him a little bit. But the ceiling is the sky. I mean, this guy is going to be the offensive player of the year, and he does everything. He's the Swiss Army knife. And I think a lot of people in fantasy are worried about taking him as their, top running back for fantasy, because they think that, he's a back that also catches the ball. He could be quarterback. He could block. He could do this. 49ers have so many running backs, but I agree with you. And I think he's going to be running the ball a lot. I like this over, and I like him for offensive player of the year, because if you look at what he did, in the games that he played, I believe he had 10 games last year, put him in a 17-game season. Woo! Christian McCaffrey.
And you rarely see these. If you go back and look at it in history, you rarely see backs that get traded mid-season. I remember Dickerson went from the Rams to the Colts. You saw another one just slip. Bettis goes from the Rams to the Steelers. You rarely see these guys have like the quick turnaround of instant success. The next year they'll blow out the numbers or whatnot, but he jumped in right away and was able to be extremely productive. So I don't understand why this number is so low, especially running in that system, that zone system, where you're going to have advantageous lanes to pick and choose. And when you have the agility combined with the vision and explosiveness, this is a cakewalk. He should easily cross this number by week 10.
I agree with you 100%. And then also lock him in for the offensive player of the year. All right, Emory, before we let you go, one more time, your official pick to win the division. Obviously, we know I'm going 49ers. I'm not gonna lay minus 200 on this. You still going with the Seahawks plus 220. You get better value now.
Yeah, absolutely. Lay that well, take the Seahawks to win a division. I just love their passing game. I love their offensive line, and whatever time these running backs return. And also keep an eye on Kendall Milton. McIntosh from Georgia. Milton is a guy that's at Georgia currently. McIntosh is the one that's at Seahawks now. He's phenomenal. But he's not Charbonnet or Walker, but they'll get those guys back, and they'll be even better as the season goes on. But the passing game, offensive line, I like Seattle.
Well, I can't wait to talk to you about this in the middle of the season. Emory, you're one of the busiest guys in sports. Tell us what you're going to be up to during the football season. I know I'm going to see you on HQ and on Sportsline. I also know that you do games as well. So talk to us about what's coming up.
Yeah, that's the thing. You're going to see me all across the board calling games. I'm excited about my college football schedule this year in terms of
Ooh,
which games I'm going to be in calling, because there's some good prospects. So I kind of
great.
be dual duty, scouting and also calling. These games are always fun to go to. And then, you'll see me all over HQ, all over Sportsline. And what else I got? Oh, obviously I got a draft guide coming. I'm already working on 2024,
Yes.
and people
First
can
of
get
all,
draft guide.
Emory's draft guide, football game plan, is a game changer. If you guys don't know about it, you definitely want to hit him up. Go over to his website, right? Is it footballgameplan.com?
Footballgameplan.com/2024 draft guide. You can pre-order your copies now. And if you just put in the year with the same handle, you'll be able to get 2020, 2021, 2022, and 2023. Over 1,000 individual prospects. I'll tell you right now, I've already graded over 100 quarterbacks for
Oof.
2024. So I'm trying to make sure we get all this stuff done so that way we can hit this guy when the combine starts. So that's what's coming down the pike.
Well, and by the way, guys, follow Emory on social at Football Game Plan on Twitter and also on Instagram. It's not just the NFL that Emory bets. You want XFL bets, you want USFL bets, you want Canadian football bets. This guy does it all. He knows everything about every single football league. Emory, thank you so much for joining us today. Even though you're on the Seahawks, I respect you and I appreciate you coming on. Thank you. Thank you. This has been Moxie Bets presented by Caesar Sportsbook. Don't forget to follow us on social, and we'll see you next time.